Hi. We've been getting a lot of questions lately on our website, which is great. It's wonderful hearing from our readers about anything that we can help them with, whether they're the senior aging in place or if they're the caregivers of aging parents. But the three questions that I got this week were about how to help aging parents downsize. Now, I did write an article about that a little while ago, so I'm guessing that's probably why I'm getting these questions, which are great questions. So I thought I'd go over the 5 tips in that article on how to help you to help your senior parent to downsize if that's something that needs to get done at that point, at the point that you guys are in. Okay, tip number 1. Start talking to your parents about downsizing early. I'm talking about like a year, 2, 3 ahead of time. Treat your parents and their possessions with respect. I know, I'm sure you do that, but I'll go into that a little bit later. Don't force your parents to make the decision to downsize. In other words, make it their decision to downsize. Listen to their needs and their wants on what they want to downsize to, and go through the entire process slowly. And in that instance, I'm talking more about the removal of objects, getting rid of things, decluttering in order to move to a smaller space. So let's go through each one of those. Start talking to your parents early. When my mother was getting ready to downsize from a house to a townhouse, the process began 2-3 years ahead of time. It was just the easier way to do it because she was extremely independent and it allowed her to make the decision herself. We just stuck to the facts, what was practical, what wasn't practical, the pros and the cons, and that seemed to help. So I hope that helps you with your parents. A tip that I can give you is that a few of my elderly friends are starting the process of thinking about downsizing, and what they're doing is they're visiting places, houses, whether it's new construction or existing homes in the neighborhoods that they want to live in, and they're checking it out, seeing, you never know, it doesn't hurt to look. So hopefully that will help you. Another tip I can give you is if you already have friends or if your parents have friends that have already downsized, they would be a great source of information to talk to, not only to visit them where they live, but just to see what the experience was like, how did they go through it, what helped them and what didn't. Okay, tip number 2, treat your parents and their possessions with respect. I know, I'm sure you do that, I have no doubt, but it's very difficult when you are dealing with a parent that is either a collector or a semi-hoarder or a full-blown hoarder. It's very difficult to get that respect for, when there are 3,000 Hummels in the cabinet and you can't imagine why can't you get rid of some of these. So it's very important to respect the fact that they have some attachment to these items no matter what. Of course, if your parent is a full-blown hoarder, I strongly urge you to get a counselor, a therapist, psychologist, whatever that specializes in that field to help you and to help them to declutter, to get rid of that stuff. But do respect how your parents feel about those items. Number 3, don't force the decision to downsize. Make it your parents. Make them make the decision. So again, stick with the facts, the pros, the cons. It's very helpful to have them rationalize through it. Of course, if your parents are suffering from any cognitive decline, that has to be taken into consideration. I understand. But if they can definitely make the decision on their own, this is where you have to allow them to do it. At the end of the day, it's their life. You may think you know what they need, and you may know absolutely what they need. But at the end of the day, it's their decision, and they have to live with the consequences of those decisions, right? So my tip is, again, keep your emotions out of the conversations on this topic. Stick with the facts, and it should go a little smoother. I know that helped with my mother, who was extremely independent and stubborn, and that helped us very much, although we had to learn to do that. It wasn't easy. I agree. All right, tip number 4, listen to what your parents need and want. My mother was extremely specific when we had to move her from Fort Lauderdale to Orlando to downsize to a new home. She did not want to move, much less go into anything smaller. She was very attached to her furniture and all her belongings. So it was extremely difficult. It was a 3-year process, but eventually she realized that practically speaking, it was the best solution. The current situation she was in was simply unsustainable and it wasn't safe. So eventually we did get her, but we had to listen to what she wanted. She had a full list of criteria. She insisted on living in a 1-story house versus an apartment or a condo. So it had to be a house. And of course, she was in her late 80s. It needed to be 1-story to be safe. So she insisted on having a backyard with a view. That was extremely important. She insisted on having a living room and dining room that accommodated her furniture. Even though we said we would buy her new furniture, it didn't matter. She wanted her existing items and they needed to fit. And she had very large furniture. So we had to accommodate that. And of course, we insisted and she agreed that she needed to live nearby my sister. Otherwise, it wouldn't have made any sense. So we finally did find a place. It took many months, but we did find a house that had the backyard, had the view. The inside had to be modified for her to fit the furniture and everything, but at least we found something that we could compromise on. But my point is, we listened to what she wanted. It made life a little easier for her and for us. And that's the best tip I can give you, is just to try to understand what it is that they want, but at the same time, keep in mind what they need. We insisted on my mother having a walk-in shower. She didn't want that, but we knew that eventually that might be something that would help her, and it did. In the last few years of her life, that was a godsend to have something easy to walk into. There were other things that we modified in the home for her, but it was what we felt she needed, not necessarily what she wanted. But again, keep the emotion out of the conversation. Try to stick to the practical facts. Number 5, go through the process slowly. It's much easier to take decluttering and downsizing inch by inch than it is to take it all at once, on a massive, clear out weekend kind of thing. Of course, if you're downsizing because you're forced into it, you may not have any choice to do that. But if you have the luxury and the option of doing it bit by bit, I would encourage you to do so. What I wrote in the article was my own experience after my husband passed away. He had a very hard time getting rid of just about anything. It was very difficult for him. He wasn't a hoarder, but he still had items that he had had for 30, 40, 50 years. And I don't know why. But anyway, so after he passed away, I had a huge house filled to the brim with stuff that I had to get rid of. So for me, the way I did it was inch by inch. So I'm going to give you the tips that I wrote in the article on how I did that. 1, I asked friends and family if they wanted anything from the house. And it was so great to see a lot of them take some things because they said, it reminded them of my husband, and that was actually very sweet. But that was one way to start getting rid of some things. And it really wasn't that many, but it was a few. 2, I then made the decision to donate items versus having a yard sale. 1, because it was emotionally easier for me to get rid of things little by little instead of all at once. So what I started doing is I made a list of all the rooms in the house, and we had a very large house. We had 19 rooms plus 2 screened-in porches and 2 outdoor decks, all of them that had furniture and knickknacks and all kinds of things. There were 11 closets in the house plus 2 kitchen pantries. I know, it was a ridiculously large house, but it was on a beautiful lot. So we fell in love with the lot. We had to buy the house. Anyway, it was filled. That's all you need to know. I then made a schedule of breaking down each area of each room. And I would spend 3 days a week doing that process. There were some days I could only do 15 minutes. There were other days I could do an hour. It just depended on what I was clearing out, how emotional I was that day, and any other factors, because I was still working full time. So having that schedule, sticking to it no matter what, and doing it bit by bit. There were days I could only do a drawer, and then there were other days that I could do an entire closet. But whatever I took out of those drawers and closets and rooms, I put into my car. And every week I took that carload to Goodwill or to a pet shelter, thrift store, whatever it was, I was getting rid of it inch by inch, bit by bit. It made the process much easier for me. It took over a year, but I did it. And the garage, everything was all cleared out, and it prepared me for the process of downsizing to something smaller. So I hope these tips help you. If you have any questions at all about aging in place, modifying your home for as you grow older, or if you're the caregiver of aging parents, please feel free to contact us at seniorsafetyadvice.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us a little like, and I will see you again next Friday. Bye.